Welcome to the True Crime Digest channel. Today, we will explore a shocking case in Texas where love, violence, and mystery intertwine in a tragic story of loss. The case of Crystal McDowell is not just about a missing young mother. It is also a journey through complex relationships, jealousy, and painful secrets. Crystal, a beautiful flight attendant, lived a life that seemed perfect. But on August 25, 2017, as Hurricane Harvey was about to make landfall in Texas, her life was completely turned upside down. Crystal mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind two children and a family in turmoil. Crystal McDowell was born and raised in Texas. From a young age, she showed independence and determination in life. After graduating, Crystal chose to become a flight attendant, where she had the opportunity to travel the world and meet many people. She was not only a professional employee, but also a cherished friend to her colleagues. However, Crystal's personal life was far from simple. She was married to Steve McDowell, a man she had lived with for 10 years. They had two children, a son and a daughter, and Crystal always tried to balance caring for her family and her career. Although they shared many beautiful memories, their marriage gradually became strained, leading to divorce. Steve, with his intense love for Crystal, found it hard to accept her desire to leave. This was the root of the troubles in their relationship. Crystal's life continued to change when she met Paul Hargrave, a young man with big dreams. This relationship helped Crystal regain joy and freedom after a long time living under pressure. But would this be enough to protect her from past threats? Crystal's new relationship with Paul Hargrave brought her a renewed light after months of darkness. They met at an event and quickly became attracted to each other. Paul, a jewelry store owner with a warm heart and romantic spirit, made Crystal feel loved and appreciated. They enjoyed wonderful dates, sharing dreams and future plans. They had even planned a trip to Europe together, and Crystal was very excited to talk about it. This relationship not only brought happiness to Crystal, but also helped her start a new chapter in her life. However, not everyone was pleased with this relationship. Steve, Crystal's ex-husband, felt hurt and jealous when he learned that she was happy with someone else. Crystal even had to keep this relationship a secret from Steve, fearing that he might react negatively. She knew that if Steve found out, things could become much worse. Would Crystal's new love be strong enough to fend off the ghosts from her past? Or would Steve do something unimaginable? On August 25, 2017, what seemed like an ordinary day turned into one of the darkest days in the McDowell family's history. Before Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, Crystal prepared for a new day. She sent a message to Paul, saying she was on her way home to care for the children. But it also signaled that things were not peaceful. The impending storm had caused panic among the people of Texas, who rushed to stock up on supplies. On social media, Crystal updated her followers about the weather and expressed her concerns about protecting her kids. She was living with Steve in a house they once shared, but she also had her own plans for her life. Throughout the day, Crystal sent a few messages to friends and family, but gradually, her communication began to cease. This worried those close to her. As the storm began, no one could have imagined that a more tragic event was unfolding. Steve, at home with the two children, reported that Crystal never showed up as promised. The prolonged silence became a warning signal for everyone. Crystal's relatives, including friends and family, quickly began searching for her. They called, texted, and ultimately, when there was no response, they decided to notify the police. The search for Crystal McDowell began, and no one could have imagined that a great tragedy awaited them ahead. Had Crystal suffered an accident, or was something darker at play? The answer remained hidden in the shadows. When Crystal McDowell was reported missing, local law enforcement sprang into action. Investigators quickly identified individuals of interest, including ex-husband Steve McDowell, new boyfriend Paul Hargrave, and Uncle Jeff, who had cared for Crystal since she was young. Each person had their own connections to Crystal, and the investigators realized they needed to question everyone involved. Steve McDowell, the ex-husband, initially cooperated with the police. He claimed that Crystal had planned to go out to buy supplies for the storm and would return home to the kids. However, something in his testimony raised suspicions among the investigators. Meanwhile, Paul Hargrave, Crystal's new boyfriend, was also very anxious. He insisted that they had a wonderful evening before and eagerly awaited her return. One of the key points of interest for the investigators was a phone call Crystal made to Steve that morning. Steve stated that Crystal told him she would not be coming home, but would stay with the kids. However, those who knew Crystal found this hard to believe. She was a devoted mother, and they couldn't fathom that she would abandon her children in a crisis. With all the suspicions and the tense situation, the investigators decided they needed to gather more evidence from those involved. They began to investigate Crystal's past, her relationships with Steve and Paul, and any signs that might indicate a motive. The investigation became a race against time as the pressure mounted, and the mystery surrounding Crystal's disappearance grew more complex. After several days of searching without results, the police decided to widen their search area. Finally, on September 2, 2017, a heartbreaking discovery was made. A group of volunteer searchers found a body in a remote forest near Baytown, Texas. The police quickly arrived at the scene to investigate. When the body was identified as Crystal McDowell, the entire community was shocked. Crystal's family and friends could not believe that a young mother with a bright future could meet such a tragic end. Her loss left a significant void not only in her family, but also in the community. The police immediately shifted to a criminal investigation phase. They began collecting evidence from the scene and searching for any clues that could relate to Crystal's death. Interviews with those involved were conducted to determine the relationship between Crystal, Steve, and Paul. Simultaneously, the details surrounding her death began to emerge, leading investigators to significant doubts about motives and primary suspects in the case. As evidence gradually built up, investigators eventually identified Steve McDowell as the prime suspect in the case. During the trial, prosecutors presented numerous pieces of evidence, including surveillance footage showing Steve at the scene at the time Crystal went missing. He had also been questioned and had inconsistencies in his statements. Steve was charged with first-degree murder. His defense attorneys argued that Crystal's death was an unfortunate accident, as Steve had no intention of killing her. However, prosecutors pointed out that Steve had a strong motive to remove Crystal from his life, as he could not accept that she had started a new relationship. Throughout the 5-day trial, witnesses provided testimonies that revealed the tension in Crystal and Steve's relationship. Some friends shared stories about conflicts, jealousy, and past violence. This reinforced suspicions that Steve could have committed murder. After considering all the evidence, the jury reached a guilty verdict in just 3 hours. Steve McDowell was sentenced to 50 years in prison for murder. When the verdict was announced, many in the community felt relieved. They had been waiting for justice for Crystal and for the 2 children living in difficult circumstances. With Steve McDowell's sentence, a new chapter opened for Crystal's 2 children, Madden and Maui. They had to endure the pain of losing their mother and now were left without a father. Authorities decided to place them with their Aunt Cindy, who promised to care for and protect them. Cindy worked hard to create a safe and stable environment for the 2 children. Although the pain of loss remained heavy, she always tried to provide them with the support and love they needed. Madden and Maui showed remarkable strength as they learned to live and move forward in life. Despite the absence of their parents, the future for the 2 children remains a significant question mark. However, with love and care from those around them, they will have the opportunity to recover and build a new life, one that Crystal would undoubtedly be proud of. The case of Crystal McDowell is not only a story about love and violence, but also a heartbreaking reminder of the consequences of domestic violence. Crystal, a young mother, lost everything in a life full of promise, leaving behind two children without parents. Through this story, we are reminded of the importance of protecting women and children in society. Let us all take action to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future.